Why do your 49ers stink? Before we get into things that made you go home this weekend, I think it's safe to say that this season's a wash.
Yeah.
Does it mean it's over for the 49ers? No. Is this the end of their little run, closing the window? I agree. We talked about it briefly last week. We brought up the Eagles, for example, right? The Eagles had a really bad year last year. We barely talked about them. We didn't even mention Jalen Hurts. Like, we barely talked about them, and they're back. They made one big change, and they're back in a big way.
The Eagles, just to play stat boy, they lost in the Super Bowl. Could have won, if not for a Jalen Hurts fumble that sort of changed the momentum of that game.
Then they had an off year.
No, they had a great year that fell apart. If you remember, they started hot.
And
then the second half of the season, it was like the wheels fell off, and people were like, is Nick Sirianni out?
Yeah.
They were thinking about revamping the whole team. A couple changes.
They're back.
Among the elite.
Yeah, because they had a foundation already. They tweaked it up a little bit, and they're back. I think the same could be said about your 49ers. They might not even have to make that many changes. They just need health.
There's not many changes that need to be made, and anyone that says, they're old, you could say that contributes to the health. But
I think it's safe to say with the McCaffrey injury, the way they played yesterday, the just overall vibe and attitude of the team, they know it's a wash, and now it's just about next year.
I wrote down...
Not their season. Not your season.
No, I wrote down, do you care why your team stinks? And I think the answer is a blaring yes. Because if your team stinks because ownership's not putting in the efforts, you struck out again on your franchise quarterback, you drafted poorly, veterans that you acquired are not delivering, that's a reason to be like bummed about it. I'm trying to take the most positive approach, and I'm saying, you know what? Do you care why your team stinks? And my team, being a Niners fan, they just suffered their fourth time in their team's history, consecutive 25-point-plus losses. And when you look at who this team is missing, they're missing all-pros, Pro Bowlers, future Hall of Famers. Right now, this team has not got full season efforts out of Christian McCaffrey, Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, Trey Greenlaw. You just found out Mason, who's having an amazing year as a backup to McCaffrey, he's now on the injured reserve. You got to sometimes say, injuries, bad luck, not your year. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, but can you say that and I'm just playing devil's advocate because I agree with you. Everything you're saying is true. But isn't that just part of the game? That's the name of the game.
It is, but
you could say that for a lot of teams. Well, if so-and-so wasn't hurt or if this and that didn't happen.
But I'm just
these
saying,
are all what ifs.
I'm just saying this is a year where
these are yes buts.
The ball has bounced badly. They lost 3 games in the last minute against division opponents. The key leaders of their team all out for extended periods of time. You sign Ayuk, big contract. He's out for the whole year. McCaffrey, Mason, again, Kittle missed some games. Trent Williams not blocking the left side. He went through a tragedy in his family. If you read about that, wishing him and his family the best. So this is a team that you almost have to say next year you wouldn't be shocked if they came back and were the Niners of the last few years.
It's not impossible.
I don't think it's improbable at all.
Health is a big factor. You don't know how bad McCaffrey's injured.
I
Meaning,
saw,
he was pushed to his limits last year, came back hurt this year. Worked his tail off just to get back out there, only to get hurt again.
Yeah,
you're not sure. I mean, not wishing this on the guy, but you don't know if he'll ever be the same or how he recovers.
Look at it this way: there are questions that answer this without even realizing it. Because I saw Adam Schefter point out, NFL Insider, that there's no talk at all of, well, any concern for John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan? No. Because ask yourself this. If the 49ers were like, we got to move on from Shanahan and John Lynch, new GM, new coach, how quickly would those two guys get scooped up? Kyle Shanahan would be the most sought-after head coach, and John Lynch, what he did to turn around that front office, they'd be scooped up in a second. It's not them. Sometimes it's just not your season. It happens in all sports.
So basically what Rich is asking you here, he's defending his 49ers. I think the same case could be made for a lot of teams, but
I don't think so.
His team is more stacked with superstars that, if healthy, would make a big difference. but why your team stinks. Do you care why they stink, or do you just chalk it up to they stink? Because you got McCaffrey out. It says 6 weeks. 6 weeks is the update.
Yeah, it's over
now.
now.
It's over.
Yeah, but he's not playing.
Do you care? Does it matter why they stink? And Rich is saying that, yes, it matters.
Yeah. Like Danny G, your Raiders. They're injured, but the caliber of injured players wouldn't have made that team like a 12-win team.
Well, we don't know that because they weren't on the field, Rich.
But do you really think
before the show, you're like, they don't have Pro Bowlers, and I'm like, yeah, they did. Christian Wilkins, Nate Hobbs on the defensive side of the ball. They lost their starting safety. They lost their 2 starting running backs. They lost their quarterback and then their backup quarterback.
Don't tell me Gardner Minshew is going to make the difference. The Raiders.
No, the Raiders were not going to be a Super Bowl contender like your Niners were supposed to be, but they could have sniffed a wild card had they stayed healthy. That was a possibility going into the year. You agreed with that before the season began.
I think there's levels of injuries. Your team is decimated, but ask yourself the question: is Antonio Pierce keeping his job?
We still don't know the answer to that.
If he keeps his job, it is because internally they feel like it was the injuries.
Yeah.
If he gets let go and they go in a new direction, it's because they realize, listen, even if they were healthy, we need to change. I think you got to ask yourself, like the Dallas Cowboys. I brought it up the other day. They need a revamp. I know Dak's out now and they've had some injuries, but do you really think Mike McCarthy's sticking around? Would you be shocked if they keep him?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, I would be shocked to answer your question, yes. But I'm also thinking about the difference between a team like the Raiders and the 49ers. Minshew was never the guy, right? I like watching him. He's a tough player. I think he's a great backup, but he was never the guy. When it comes to the 49ers quarterback, Brock Purdy's never been the problem. With all the injuries and all the ups and downs they've had this season, no one's really pointed the finger at all at Brock Purdy. So you have that as a plus side too, moving forward next year. So
and you might be able to get him. You might be able to get him a little cheaper now too.
Rich, because the Raiders don't have as many Pro Bowlers as the Niners, I almost could argue their injuries are worse because they lack depth. Your Niners, I thought at least, even with some of these injuries, had enough depth to still win some of these close games.
I did too. I mean. And again, sometimes it's just not your year. Do you think the Niners are done? Look at that's a headline. I'm looking around on FS1 and ESPN.
They're done this season.
Yeah, they're done this year.
Without question, they're done this season. You could just see it in their attitude, and that injury just added to it last night. So they're done. That's the answer to that question. But are they done moving forward? And I think not. I think no. And that's why I brought up Brock Purdy.
It's an interesting one.
You still have a solid foundation. If you get healthy, you're good.
I could be annoyingly optimistic and say, the window hasn't closed. But, Danny, there's guys that could say, hey, listen, man.
The Raiders, you still need a quarterback and your health, right? So it's a little more difficult for you guys to get back on track.
2020.
But staying healthy is a major part of the season and your success. So
I heard someone make the great point that 2020 until now, the Niners have had multiple deep Super Bowl type runs where when you add up all those games, it's like an extra season. 4 playoff games, multiple years, and to the point where guys like Kittle and Bosa and some of these guys, Trey Greenlaw, and
they've got more wear and tear on them.
They have more wear and tear. Like Fred Warner has been playing the whole year with a broken ankle. Like, I mean, it couldn't get worse for the 49ers. Like, short of Brock Purdy going down, and then, what worse could happen?